Hi guys, welcome to Yesterday's Coffee, the podcast where we cover fitness, nutrition, and business, all of our coffee that may or may not have been brewed yesterday. And today we're talking about coffee.
Caffeine.
And caffeine.
Yeah.
Mostly caffeine.
It only took us 20 episodes to
actually cover
broach this subject.
The namesake. But yeah, we're talking all about coffee and caffeine, how it can affect your health, but also, how it relates to any fitness, performance, weight goals.
I think this is
all
a good,
the good stuff.
Follow-up to the alcohol one we did last week, too.
Now we're just covering all the drugs, I guess.
Alcohol and caffeine, what runs America, right?
Right? Exactly.
Yeah. So where do we want to start with caffeine?
I mean, I think it's important that just to remind everybody what caffeine actually is, which is a stimulant, which I think most people
know that.
should know. But that it actually is it described as a drug?
Yeah.
It's a drug, right? Yeah. It's a drug. Your liver does have to process caffeine the same way that it processes all other toxins that come into the body, but that's not saying that caffeine is toxic. Obviously, it can be in high doses, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Other things that caffeine can do for you?
Well, it wakes you up, gives you energy. I mean, there's a reason it's one of the first things people do in the day. I mean, you see those shirts that don't talk to me if I haven't had my morning coffee or whatever.
Yes,
to that
exactly.
To that idea. And yeah, I mean, it's great in that respect, and there's a reason so many people drink it and use it is because it's effective. It does what it's supposed to do. And when you're consuming it in proper dosages, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Some of the other things that it can do is actually increase blood pressure. It's also a diuretic, so it expels water from the body. And so it's one of those things where taken in the right dosage for you and your situation is awesome and can have benefits in both the physical and mental realm. And then if misused or overused, can then become a major detriment to your health.
Absolutely. So I guess let's get a little bit more specific then about pros and cons. So all of the pros. Makes you more productive, keeps you alert and awake. And how does it keep you alert and awake?
This is probably a better question for you.
Yeah.
You can probably explain this a little better.
So your brain has these receptors that pick up adenosine. So adenosine is a really critical part of your major energy molecule in the body, right? ATP. A lot of people know what ATP is or have heard of ATP. So once the ATP has been used for energy, right? So everything kind of splits apart. You have the
phosphate breaks off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not important, too complicated, but
I thought that's where we were going. But
so once everything just splits apart, so once you've used this molecule of energy and it's broken back down into its original building block, which is the adenosine, your brain it picks up those adenosine molecules, right, via these little receptors. And basically what happens is you're using energy, which creates this large amount of adenosine that the brain picks up. So the brain knows that you've used the energy. Right? Meaning you're low on energy. So the more adenosine that builds up, the more tired you get because the brain is picking up that you have less and less energy to work with.
That makes sense.
So by taking caffeine kind of tricks the brain. Caffeine can attach to those same receptors, blocking the brain from actually picking up the adenosine.
So it lowers that feedback loop.
Exactly. So by caffeine taking the place of the adenosine, you don't feel as tired as soon, keeping you awake and alert, which is beneficial to a certain extent.
Right.
So that kind of feeds into some of the cons, where your brain now has to continue to produce these receptors because caffeine is blocking half of them. So your brain just keeps popping out new receptors that the adenosine can then bind to. So over time, it's going to take you more and more caffeine to have the same effect.
Because your body's always adapting.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So
your body adapts to everything.
You keep giving it this influx of caffeine, which requires more and more adenosine receptors to be made because your body still wants to achieve that level of equilibrium that it's used to.
Exactly. Your body wants to adapt to this caffeine. So caffeine tolerance can be built in this way. The other kind of negative side to this whole adenosine issue is that once the caffeine has been processed all the way through your body, now you have all of this adenosine built up, which kind of contributes to a crash that some people feel after caffeine. Yeah. So it's like once all that caffeine dissipates, you're left with a ton of adenosine, more than you would have had if it was just like kind of this gradual process. And so then the adenosine goes to stick to all those receptors, and then you kind of have this like wave of tiredness. Or
and that's where you go get more coffee.
That's when you would go get more coffee. Or if this happens overnight, you wake up feeling tired and groggy.
Interesting.
Feeding the loop of, now I need to drink my morning coffee to get rid of that feeling, but it was probably partly produced by having the caffeine in the first place.
Yeah.
So even though using caffeine in small amounts is super beneficial for a lot of people, you have to kind of moderate, but you also have to like take a look at your diet and your lifestyle to make sure you're setting yourself up for success. Because the other really good things about caffeine are, you know, improved memory, improved mental clarity, improved reaction time, so it can feed into performance.
I think it also helps with pain tolerance and energy output.
Because you probably know more about how it impacts performance. So what are like the pros on the performance side?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. It'll actually, to some degree, dull sensation of pain. So if you think about that end of a set where you're really pushing yourself, I mean, it might not be so significant that you went from 10 reps to 20 reps, but maybe you went to 11 or 12. And so those incremental benefits, when you add them up over time, can lead to significant performance gains, significant muscle gains, fat loss, whatever. And then on the fat loss side, because we're talking about a stimulant here, that means we're increasing the metabolic rate. So We're burning off more calories. That's why every single supplement you see that's marketed as a fat burner has some sort of caffeine in it.
Definitely.
And it's normally in very large quantities because, number one, caffeine is effective. It will speed up your heart rate. It will make your resting heart rate a little bit higher, so you're burning off more calories at rest. And it's something that people can feel. So when you put that in a fat burner, you get that feeling of like...
You get like a buzz.
I'm on a fat burner right now.
Well, and it also is an appetite suppressant. Too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So,
too.
You know, another method for it being used in weight loss would be to kind of dull hunger, which, not always a good thing, but sometimes a good thing.
I mean, yeah, when used in the right situation, it's great. And there's a reason why it's used so frequently. Not to say that it's always used properly, but it has benefits. No doubt about that. Definitely.
I think one of the other cons too is that I think it can give people this like false sense of how much sleep they need, or a false sense of like how sleep deprived they might be. You know what I mean? Because caffeine, like you said, caffeine covers up things to a certain extent. So if you're always under the influence of caffeine, you probably don't really have a great connection with your body in terms to know how to best, you know, fuel it or how to best take care of it. But I think the sleep thing is a big one. People are like, oh, well, you know, like I don't need a full 8 or 9 hours because, you know, caffeine's my best friend.
Yeah.
And that just is going to dig you into a hole.
Yeah. So
that's not good.
So what happens when caffeine's become a problem? Like you hear that there's like a withdrawal period, right?
Yeah. And so science, I think, kind of goes back and forth because what they've mostly traced these withdrawal symptoms back to is kind of like the blood pressure issue or like the vasoconstriction.
Yeah.
It's a vasoconstrictor.
Right.
So it narrows all of your arteries and blood vessels. Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, that's the right way to say
it. So basically, when you're withdrawing or when you stop drinking caffeine, once you've kind of built up a tolerance to it, you can have too much blood running to the brain at one time, which can give you kind of this like dull ache.
Interesting.
I know it sounds crazy. That's what a lot of the science pointed to. And so by taking the caffeine again, you have that what's become normal to your body. It's more of a state of vasoconstriction, and that will ease the pain.
Right. It makes sense. It all goes back to equilibrium. Whatever your body begins getting used to is its comfortable state. And so that's, I was just talking to somebody today where it's totally normal for them to not eat until like 6 p.m., 7 p.m. They don't even get hungry until that time.
Because
they've been doing it for so
adapted.
long because, exactly, your body adapts to it. So same thing with caffeine or any other drug like that. Your body will find that resting place equilibrium-wise, and it gets comfortable there.
Definitely.
So when you deviate from that, it's uncomfortable.
Exactly. So, headache being the number one thing people complain about, and then the other thing being like grogginess or fatigue or lack of mental clarity, which I think we already explained with the adenosine.
Right.
So withdrawal symptoms are absolutely real, but it probably says more about like the state of your body just in general versus like the caffeine thing. But your body will adjust, and that's the important thing.
Yeah.
You don't need caffeine, and if you do feel like you need caffeine, there's a problem that should be explored a little bit deeper.
That's probably a time to take a break from it if that's what you feel like.
I think they say 7 days is about the amount of time that can kind of reset your caffeine tolerance.
Yeah. Enjoy that week.
Yes, so that week. And I mean, if you're somebody who drinks a ton, like if you're like a pot a day or 2 pots a day or however much caffeine you're taking in, or if you're
2 pots a day.
Yeah, I've known people. Or like the people that do the like 5-hour energies, they'll do like 3 of those in a day. I mean, once you start turning caffeine into a shot that's like not coffee anymore,
gains, bro.
Then you're in trouble in terms of like building a tolerance and having crazy withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah.
Because you can build a tolerance to caffeine within 1 or 2 days. You know what I mean? If you're just increasing the amount of caffeine you're taking day over day, like that is automatically going to increase your tolerance because it all goes back to those receptors in your brain.
Well, and it's a case-by-case basis. I mean, some people will build up that tolerance really quickly. Some people, it takes a very long time. So you got to pay attention to how you're feeling. Definitely.
Well, and so people that get, kind of jittery with caffeine intake or get headaches from having too much caffeine, that typically goes back to their detoxification systems, like we talked about the other 2 podcasts ago.
Right.
And the status of their liver. So obviously your liver is what is helping your body clear caffeine. And if your body isn't able to do it as quickly or as effectively as it should be, and you have a lot of these byproducts building up, then you can end up with, heart palpitations and shaking or headaches or the bad symptoms of having caffeine, even if it wasn't a crazy amount.
Right.
Even if it was only like a little bit. If you get those symptoms, there's probably something else going on.
That makes sense. So is there a best way to consume caffeine?
So we've been talking about caffeine up to this point. Coffee kind of sort of a little bit. But I think sometimes people get a little carried away with the way that they consume their caffeine.
Yeah, you think so?
Mostly in the form of like Starbucks venti frappuccinos,
yeah,
or like whatever crazy concoctions.
Coffee.
Exactly. Honestly, most of those things don't even really have like that much caffeine in them, I feel like. But you do have to keep in mind, especially if you have any sort of weight-related goal, that a lot of these flavored coffee drinks are going to come with a significant amount of calories, significant amount of carbs and sugar, right? Like you're not really getting anything beneficial.
Right. And these are the quote-unquote coffee drinks.
Like a coffee
because coffee
beverage.
In and of itself has 0 calories.
Yeah, no. Coffee, like straight black coffee, even if you put a little cream or sugar on your own, if it's measured out and accounted for, totally fine. You don't have to drink your coffee black.
You don't have to.
That's not what we're saying.
You should try it.
You should try it. You should try it.
Learn how to, because if you teach yourself, you'll never go back.
But if you like a little cream and sugar, there's nothing wrong with it.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but we are called Yesterday's Coffee, and I am going to promote black coffee because it's the best way to enjoy it. Aside from that little tirade, it is totally fine to add cream, a little bit of sugar or a sweetener to your coffee. Those are going to be typically in low enough amounts. And if we're talking about a regular cup of coffee here, that is not going to make a huge difference. We're also talking about
if you portion out your creamer and your sugar and don't just like drink a little coffee with your cream.
Right.
Because I also know people that do the opposite.
A big difference there.
So again, you just have to be mindful about what you're consuming the caffeine in, and knowing, if you have any sort of weight-related goal, that stuff is obviously going to count into your like calorie budget for the day.
Yeah. I mean, if you're having a tablespoon of real cream, I'm not talking about like sugar-filled creamer. real cream, a tablespoon is like, 5 grams of fat? That's going to, if that's all you're having, that's ultimately going to be pretty negligible.
Sure.
Now, if you're talking about adding a couple tablespoons of the creamer that makes my coffee taste like caramel mocha cake donut, then yeah, that can be a little bit different. And so it's one of those things where if you want to have that type of sweet coffee drink, then it gets to the point where you've got to make sure that's fitting in with the rest of your macros.
Definitely.
You can still do it, but it can't be as much of an afterthought. Whereas if you like black coffee, as long as you're staying hydrated and you're not over consuming the caffeine end of things, there's not really any detriment to drinking it. You're not having to worry about
there are a lot of really
calories.
Good beneficial compounds. So the reason we're talking about where to get your caffeine is if you're taking caffeine pills, or if you're doing a 5-hour energy, or if you're doing like shots of just straight up, I don't know, liquid chemical caffeine, whatever that is, you also might be missing out on the actual beneficial parts of things like coffee and tea, because coffee and tea contain hundreds and hundreds of compounds. They haven't even identified all of them. Like, science is still working on that.
Yeah.
But the ones that they have identified, are all these beneficial, what are they called? Polyphenols. Polyphenols. Yeah. You've got a lot of antioxidants and a lot of other like big, long, drawn out names. But the bottom line is they are very beneficial and they have a lot of good things to them. But if you're doing something like energy drinks, or if you're doing something like caffeine pills, you're missing out on all those antioxidants entirely.
Right. And I mean, you're still going to get the effects
of caffeine,
good or bad, from the caffeine.
Yes.
But yeah, if you're consuming them from like a coffee or a tea, there are other benefits to be had from those sources.
Kind of like the red wine thing, right?
Yeah.
So like red wine versus other alcohols, red wine has higher antioxidants, which might be a little beneficial. So if you're going to consume something, you might as well get all of the benefits as possible.
And I mean, that's everyone's favorite study to read, right? How much longer you'll live based on your red wine consumption.
Hey, I mean,
those articles love to circle the internet. If that's what science
says, I'm all for it. So what about energy drinks? Because me and you have not the same
we don't see
opinion about it. Yeah.
So energy drinks. I'm a big fan of the 0-calorie monsters.
We know.
And I limit myself to one a day in the summer. It's typically my summer drink, to be perfectly honest.
That's true.
And I think it's perfectly fine, provided you're still standing by the basic hydration recommendations. One monster isn't going to do any damage to you. It's a totally regular amount of caffeine. I think it's 160 milligrams in a can. Now, if you're talking about like drinking a bunch of them throughout the day, that's obviously never something that I would recommend.
Not quite.
And again, it's consuming these things in proper quantities. So if you're talking about 1 can a day, or even less frequent than that, you're not going to have any issues with it. It's where you're starting to build up unhealthy amounts of this stuff, because there are so many stimulants packed into that that it can lead to some issues with the overconsumption of it.
Definitely. I think that there are other potential cons to energy drinks. One of which being, okay, you said you drink the sugar-free ones. Many people do not.
Right.
There are far more energy drinks that have lots and lots of sugar than there are like 0 sugar energy drinks.
And I would never recommend any of those, just like I never recommend like concentrated juices and stuff like that. That's just because it's literally just a sugar drink with some caffeine thrown in.
So just want to put that out there. A lot of energy drinks, most energy drinks, are going to have a ton of sugar in them because it's going to, kind of help boost that alertness or energy you feel.
Those are always a waste of time. Avoid those.
But even the ones that are 0 sugar, some of the issues that I have are the fact that they contain a lot of extra additives. So a lot of artificial sweeteners, a lot of other things that are just like really sciencey sounding that I don't exactly know what they are. Again, they don't affect everybody badly, but they do affect some people.
Yeah. I mean, if you drink something and you have an adverse reaction to it, by all means, don't drink it.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's not something that you need to be afraid of. If you consume it, you enjoy it, and you have no issues with it.
Yes, as long as you're also doing other things that take care of your body, right? That
Correct.
like help naturally improve your body's detoxification and like you're living a good, healthy lifestyle. But I think it's important to say that because
healthy,
sometimes people have reaction to things and they don't know where it's coming from. So that is something that's pretty common, is for people to have adverse reactions to artificial additives.
Yeah.
Artificial sweeteners.
That can certainly happen.
Preservatives, all those things. So, yeah, I don't know. Just wanted to throw that out there. So it's not my favorite.
In moderation, it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not arguing that it is the best way to get your caffeine. But it's, like I said, if it's the 0-calorie options and you're limiting yourself to maybe one a day or less, then it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I think so. The last thing that's pretty common, or a common way for people to drink their caffeine or drink their coffee, especially right now, would be bulletproof coffee.
Yeah.
Right?
Bulletproof. God, that popped up, 6 or 7 years ago?
Yeah.
Is when it first started becoming popular. And it's fine. I mean, so bulletproof coffee is what? It's grass-fed butter, MCT oil, and stevia. Just blend it up.
Not even always the stevia. But I guess that could be part of it.
That's typically the sweetener that's used.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's your all-natural sweetener.
Sure. Well, or some people just don't sweeten it, I guess.
Well, right. I mean, people can avoid it, but that's the quote-unquote recipe, definitely. I think.
So, and so what's the point of the MCT?
So, I mean, MCT oil in and of itself is great. It's a medium-chain triglyceride, meaning that it's actually broken down really quickly in the digestive system, and it actually accelerates fat loss because of that digestion mechanism. Yeah. And basically. So yeah, it's used. You'll see this used as a supplement a lot in ketogenic diets, and so it's combined with butter in the bulletproof coffee to create this basically like long, sustainable energy source. And then it's obviously got the caffeine in there too, which kind of helps stimulate that. So the idea is that you would be able to consume this, get a nice long energy benefit from it without seeing that crash, because you've also got the fats backing you up from an energy standpoint. And
also without having like the same jitteriness, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. So the point of it is to improve mental clarity with the ketones from the MCT oil or from coconut oil that some people use.
Yep.
And then to have kind of like a buffer being the butter in terms of how to prolong.
Right. Because fat's slow digestion.
Yes. So yeah, like Kyle said, just kind of giving you a nice, steady, long-term energy boost.
And I've had it plenty of times.
Yeah. I think it's delicious. I love it.
No, it tastes great.
I love it. But I think it's important for people to know that these things aren't miracles and that...
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to do anything crazy for you. It really can help with long-term energy, especially if you do get jittery from coffee and stuff like that. It can help kind of slow down
That's how it works for me.
Right.
It keeps me from getting too jittery.
Exactly. It can slow down that metabolism, or how am I trying to say that? The metabolism of the caffeine, or the uptake of the caffeine. Yes. That's what I'm trying to say. It can slow that down. So that can really be useful. But again, if you're going to go that route, because it's actually become a
higher
calorie-based drink, now you've got to fit that into the rest of your day.
And a lot of those are like pretty high calorie. Yeah. I mean, it could be 20 plus grams of fat just in your morning coffee.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're doing a tablespoon or two of butter and then a tablespoon of MCT, you're looking at 40 grams of fat right there.
Yeah.
So it can be a 400 calorie drink.
Yeah. Which the reason being for people who are on keto, because they're trying to increase their fats. But another way people use it, I guess, would be with, not with intermittent fasting, but just people following a higher fat.
Yeah, I mean, it can be
diet.
Used in any situation, but it's definitely popular with keto. It's popular with a number of other situations where you're trying to keep your fats up, but it's just something to account for.
Well, and I think a lot of people see it and see that bulletproof coffee has fat burn benefits or fat loss benefits, and they don't really understand how to use it. So this would be something that a lot of people who use it will replace their breakfast with this.
Right.
And they'll push their first meal to later in the day. And they know that this is a higher calorie coffee drink.
Right.
So if you're just drinking this to drink it and you're just adding it into your normal day, thinking that it's going to have fat loss benefits, it's a tool. It's not like a magic beverage. Okay?
Yeah.
You have to use it the right way.
The calories that it's adding is not going to make up the additional caloric burn it provides. Yeah. So it's got to be fit into your current setup.
Definitely. Anything else? I think that's
I think that'll do it.
I think that's about it. So basically, to summarize, caffeine in moderate amounts can actually be really good. I think it should be used more supplementally, and it should never be something that you rely on to get you through a day.
Definitely.
If you're relying on it, you might want to take a step back and see what your diet looks like, see what your lifestyle looks like, and set yourself up better, because caffeine should be an enhancement.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for tuning in. If there's anything you'd like us to cover in the future, feel free to reach out to myself at hypertrofit.com or Alexa at therootedrd.com. And we will see you guys again next week.
Yep, we'll see you guys next week.